Right. Remember that persecution is always a collision of worldviews.
Yeah, that's right.
And right. And there's formal persecution in which a state tries to enforce a worldview on churches. That's formal persecution. Informal persecution is where the mob down the streets decides that you've said something against Mohammed and we're going to beat you up. Okay, that's informal persecution. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference between the two. Um, where Australia is, based on conversations I've had with you, I interviewed a couple of people from New Zealand, talked to people in Australia. You are where we were in the 90s. Things seemed better. The church wasn't really too concerned. It didn't see the big green dragon coming. And there were only a small group of people that actually did. So you're right. Persecution will always be an attack on your faith, an attempt to get you to apostatize from that faith. And so there are skills that you have to have, and you do need to know what they are ahead of time in order to keep your faith intact during that time. And the first question is, what are you willing to throw on the table for your faith? Is your faith something that fits into your life, or does your life fit into your faith? Are you willing to put everything on the table for Christ? That means your life, your property, your marriage, your household, and your freedom. How much of that are you willing to go before you spit in the face of Christ? That's always the question that I ask. And throughout history, large numbers of Christians have been more than willing to turn on Christ when it came to a time of persecution. So it comes up on you gradually, but when the moment of trial comes, it will come on you very, very quickly. And if you don't know what your answer has been or will be, you will get taken and you will fall. Now, that doesn't mean you can't get up again, which is a very important thing. I say, if you fall, get up, which is exactly what Jesus said to Peter when he told him, you're going to deny me here, guy. He said, but when you've recovered, because remember, Peter went out and wept bitterly. He had betrayed his best friend. And Jesus said, when you recover, go and strengthen your brethren. They're going to need you. Okay. So that's the situation that we're facing in the West. It's getting stronger and stronger. In this country, there have been open protests against lockdowns. Churches have refused to shut. There is a church north of me in Alberta, Canada, where the pastor refused to close. He was put in jail, and they let him out, but then they put up a big chain link fence around his church so people couldn't go into the church. Ontario province was just locked down last Saturday, and the Premier of Ontario, they even put roadblocks between Ontario, at the border of Ontario and Quebec, and Ontario and Manitoba. So I had calls from listeners of the show in Ontario saying, we're living in a police state. You know, they're not letting us do anything. They're telling us what we can do and can't do. Coercion is overt. You will do this, or we're going to fire you from your job. We are going to put you in prison. We'll confiscate your money, your goods, break up your family. That's coercion. Co-opting is the dangerous part for Christians. It comes on gradually, and a lot of Christians don't see it coming, and it just demands little compromises all along the way. It's a death by 1,000 cuts as you go along. That's the co-opting part. In many cases, they convince people, there are groups, and I say masquerading as Christian organizations in politics, saying, oh, well, we're evangelical or we're Pentecostal, but we believe X, Y, Z. They're not. They're wolves in sheep's clothing. And that is the co-opting part. They actually get you to go along with it without, and so I always say that, you know, like there are three categories in the activist mindset. Number one are the great and good. They are. Number two are conservatives. Those are people who object and demand a few changes here and there, but don't get in the way. The radicals, as they will call them, the extremists, are the ones who say, this is stupid, this is dangerous, and we're not going there. End of story. They will call you radicals. And you notice it was something you just said, I can't remember what it was, that was really prescient. And the idea of how they frame things. Things are always framed in such a way to put you and me on the defensive. It's the framing of the argument, right? It's the framing of the argument that gets you. And so if you, again, motive and method, if you oppose the framing, then they claim you're opposed to the motive as well. And you're not. I don't think you and I are in favor of oppression of groups. We're not in favor of slavery. We're not in favor of racism. But there is, if you don't take it the way we want you to take it, then that's it. That's the it's a combination of coercing and co-opting.